Welcome to the Great Work of Your Life interview series produced by Revealing Genius. Our guest today is a founder, a CEO, and a business consultant. Born and bred in the Bronx, New York, and he's now living in Miami. His entrepreneurial pursuits have included Jordan Anderson Advertising, which he grew from his basement to 7 million in top-line revenue and a Soho location. He also started Product U Career Services to assist solopreneurs with their personal marketing and business development strategies. And his pedigree is incredible. He's worked for not one, but two New York City ad agencies before he started his own. He's a career and marketing columnist, keynoter, and blogger. And he's very active with SCORE, which is the Service Corps of Retired Executives. It's the nation's largest network of volunteer expert business mentors, where he coaches individuals to plan, launch, manage, and grow their businesses. But get this, he's always been deeply involved in marketing and sales, mastermind, and business transformational groups, which is morphing into his next big act. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So please welcome Jordan Anderson.
Thank you, Mary. Great to be here with you.
Oh, I'm excited to get into these questions. You certainly have had an amazing career, and we are kindred spirits in many ways. So let's start the first two questions. What gives you energy and what drains your energy?
Well, what gives me energy is talking to people like you, people who are not only really great at what they do, but they care. One of my favorite quotes are "Interesting people are interested." And watching a few of your interviews, Revealing Genius, I was taken how you listen so well and are able to draw the greatness out of people. So being around people who are in that mode, which is kind of rare, I have to say, energizes me. And I have kind of a personal list of what I call energizers, what I need to be doing each day. I don't necessarily follow it every day, but it could be aerobic walking. It could be listening to Broadway music. It could be journaling. What energizes me and feeds my whole self, mind, body, spirit. What drains me is, I guess, apathy. People who or organizations that don't show up for the game, meaning it's just follow the sheep. I like courage, rebels, although I'm not necessarily would classify myself in that category, but I like people who think differently and are out there. So at times I feel I could be a little bit too judgmental, but people are people. But I think the key thing that drains my energy is not utilizing my time in a way where I feel energized in a lot of ways.
Yeah, makes sense. And I understand too, from talking with you, that you are fanatical about comedy and Broadway musicals. Do you have a favorite Broadway musical?
A bunch of them. I don't. I think when I was around 8 years old, growing up in the Bronx in a little two-bedroom apartment, I remember listening to the radio and remember like dancing to some Broadway song, and I don't even know what it was, but my dad was watching a football game on Sunday, and he goes, "What are you doing? Get out of the way. My team's going to lose." So that kind of, I put that on hold for a number of years. In terms of favorite musicals, there's a bunch of them. When Hamilton was running, I actually won the lottery where I sat in the first row for, I think the tickets were like $10 a piece. And then 2 weeks later, I won the lottery again for Hamilton. So I would say my favorite probably of all times is Les
Les
Miserables.
Mis,
Yeah.
classic. Oh, yes. I have the score and sheet music, and the music is just phenomenal.
I don't know. It's just part of who I am. And I discovered this album called The 2,000-Year-Old Man in College. And this was the days of putting the LPs, and I almost burned a hole in that album, or it was like a 4-album set with Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner. And if anyone has not heard it, you can find it on YouTube. But I love all sorts of comedy, stand up, movies, a lot of silly stuff too. Wacky. It energizes me and relaxes me as well.
Interesting, because above your right or your left ear behind you on the wall, there is a frame, and it looks like it's how to be an artist. Yes? So do you
Yes.
consider yourself to be an artist?
When I first started, I thought I was going to be in the NBA. So I wasn't, but I didn't grow to 6'3". I was a 5'11" kid from the Bronx who was a decent ball player. Anyway, as my career progressed, I saw that I had the mix of artistic qualities. I love creativity. I love being around creative people. But my background is also kind of more marketing, sales, business relationships, that sort of thing. But over the years, especially as I'm preparing and been moving towards, as you put it, my next act, I consider myself kind of a business artist and also a business architect. So I try to capture both the artistic side into business and also the architectural, which I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit.
Oh, business architect. I love those words, which is a great segue to the next two questions. Let's talk about the work. So, there are a lot of folks who are listening right now who are thinking about their next act, and you are literally right in the middle of morphing into a next act, which is something you've done. I mean, you've reinvented a couple of times, and now you're reinventing again. So, let's talk about your work. Like, what is the work? What do you love most about your work, and what do you like least about your work?
What I like in terms of reinvention, I think it's a scary word for most, and it's a scary word for me, but it's also a very exciting, adventurous time, which brings freedom, expression, creativity. So essentially, I'll answer the question in kind of a weird way, but having my ad agency for many years and being in a specialty which is called recruitment advertising, which essentially has been about branding companies as employers of choice, which meant or means I've done a lot of work with just about every imaginable industry, healthcare, high technology, nonprofit, in helping organizations find various types of people, from nurses, software engineers, project managers. And back then, and this was my first job out of college, it was mostly print advertising. Going back to the 80s and 90s, everything ran in mostly newspapers and journals and print. So essentially, I was working with human resources, which is now talent management, talent acquisition. The name originally was personnel, of course. So I was really kind of branding brick and mortar, working with corporate and being a kid out of school, eventually getting married, raising a family. It was a formula to it, which I liked. I would make my phone calls, make my appointments, and build, build my business, eventually opening my own firm in 95. So as I started to do this, and, we met in 2001 at a West Virginia retreat, I was beginning that journey of saying, there's something that I need to do more. There's a bigger picture that I need to do more. And that was kind of a turning point. And I realized that the parts of the business or interactions in life has always been more of the personal piece. So when I would go into an organization, I would be queuing into the people I met, the employees. What was it about the organization where they can kind of bring out their best internally as well as the outside branding? So I continued doing that. I started a couple companies. One was Corporate Healers Inc., called Chi, which was probably a bit ahead of its time, because I used the word spirit, which was a dangerous word in corporate America, about bringing spirit into the workplace, which was really more along the lines of what's prevalent now: purpose, work-life balance, and that sort of thing. But I think, again, the timing was not quite right. Product U, which is really the personal branding aspect, which I've been very excited about, is so relevant in today's world of work because essentially, especially since COVID, people are now creating their own work in some aspects. People can be a company, they could be a part-timer, they could be a freelancer, whatever it happens to be. So what I did, and I started incorporating into healthcare, which I know you do a lot of work in. I started going into my hospital clients and working with nurses from nurse appreciation and recognition days. And without going into all the details, I found, gee, this is really lighting my fire. I really like interviewing, kind of what we're doing now, the nurses, and finding out, besides just the clinical aspects, what are some of other aspects of your work that you really love? And some had a creative piece, some were really good from an interpersonal or from a clinical. And what I tried to do is sculpt the individual's work, passion, skills into pieces, which turned out to be these profiles, um, which not only help with retention and personal empowerment and that sort of thing. So I said, wow, this is really great. I have to explore this more. So that has been kind of the catalyst for the work I'm doing now, which is really helping a lot of small business owners, coaches, consultants who are looking to express themselves predominantly through marketing and branding. Um, so I won't give you a much longer answer than I have, but that's been kind of the evolution.
Yeah, and I love the words you use. You use the word sculpt, you use the words architect, you have how to be an artist framed in your office. Um, and there's you've done so many things yeah, to this point, and you're just now morphing into something even bigger, like being something even bigger. And there's always this thread. There's always been this thread about there's spirit, there's transition, there's career, there's it's always woven through the fabric of everything that you have done. So did when did you realize you knew what the great work of your life would be? Or is that still to come?
One of the key times is when we met in 2001, about 2 weeks after 9/11. Um, and I was very hesitant about going. And our coach led the retreat, and I was kind of like a semi co-facilitator. And I met you, of course, and I was in that room, and I was going through the exercises. I was mildly co-facilitating, and I remember it was, I think, a 2 or 3 day retreat. And I remember at one point getting in touch with these feelings or dormant skills that were inside of me that I just hadn't touched. And then at one point, if you recall, during the retreat, each person would kind of get up there after doing the exercises and say, this is what I'm looking for. Does anybody have ideas? And it was like, wow, I had like a zillion ideas for everybody. And I still have the testimonials, and yours especially was, Jordan, thank you for helping me connect the dots. Do it for others or leave a legacy or something. And it was like, wow, this is like, I never realized I had this inside of me. And then the thing that was very freaky was I went back and I almost went home. I remember saying, this is kind of scary. I'm getting in touch with this superpower, so to speak, but yet I don't know if I can handle it. And, now you can call it the imposter syndrome, fear of success, the Mandela quote, we fear our light, et cetera, that sort of thing. And I've had to work through that over the years, because that was the point where I said, this is very unique. This is very special. I'm scared, but I'm excited. But I didn't leave. I stayed, and that's come up in some ways. So I think what happens, and you talk about being on stage in the Revealing Genius, I think a lot of my process has been um, having the courage to go up on stage, to embrace those talents and know that if it doesn't work out in the beginning, it's not the end. You can improve, you can get better. So I think that was a huge point. And as I've progressed and evolved, a lot of the stuff that has been dormant has really been uprooted or awakened inside of me.
And I can attest, we're in a mastermind group together, which is very powerful, the Purposeful Business Circle. And it's a virtual environment, and it's fun to watch the other folks in the group, because when we come to the ideation phase, where we put a challenge or a problem out there and then we ask for feedback, I I watch because folks can't wait for you to weigh in, because they know that you're going to help them sculpt, you're going to help them architect, you're going to help them connect the dots. Like, I feel like that's your superpower, which is one of our questions today. So why don't we tackle that? So it's the 10,000 hour question. Where do you think you've spent 10,000 hours honing your superpower, in your words?
Probably from growing up in the Bronx, street smarts. I think I learned as much growing up in, well, I use the Bronx because you hear the term street smarts, but it's really kind of emotional IQ. What do you pick up from being with people? That sort of thing. So my 10,000 hours is definitely, I've been, I guess, blessed, whether it's genetically or whatever, that I'm a curious person. So I like to listen and learn from a lot of people. Um, my superpowers is a dot connector. Yes, I love connecting dots with people, whether they like it or not. Which means if I if I say to my wife, why don't you do this or why don't you do that? She may say, enough already. I'm too busy today. But it's just a natural sort of thing that I do, whether it's in work or life. And I look at career life design, which is part of being a sculptor or a business artist. They everything kind of is morphed together. There's no such thing as just work or separate from life. They are all integrated together. So the best way of describing, I guess, myself is I'm a natural synthesizer. I can hear pieces of things and connect it for other people. Always hard to do it for ourselves. That's why therapists are in business. We can't cure ourselves. And also a synergizer. So for example, what I find is I'm not what you would call a career counselor per se, but if I was to talk to you or someone and they would tell me this is what I'd like to do, this is my past skills, my experience. I'm looking to perhaps either start a business or maybe advance to a role with my company. I can put together a blueprint for them very easily, as I did at that retreat in West Virginia. And the thing about it is my style, and I use the word that we hear in marketing, USPs, or unique selling points. What I do is I've kind of modified that to unique style points. So everyone has their unique style as well as their special unique qualities. So what I do pretty much as a niche is if I'm working with a small business owner or a career changer, and um, I help them really position themselves, and I redefine what sales, marketing, and branding is, because people hear the word sell, it's a four-letter word. Yeah, nobody wants to go near the word sell. So my style is very much the antithesis of what people view as selling and marketing and branding. It's much more relationship oriented, which is what our new workplace and economy is about. People want to get to know others, and it's very, very hard in the digital era to deliver that. So what I do is I redefine work life or career life, and I also redefine what sales, marketing, and branding is, which for me has always been my style, which is more not in your face, aggressive, bother. It's about getting to know the whole person. So that is where I put my 10,000 hours from a career standpoint. And now the new direction is more in that shifting of more of the how can I affect uh, the world in my way, but tuning into more of the personal side.
Yeah, makes sense. And and Jordan, how do you define success?
Um, if I can read you something, is that okay?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I saw that, and this is a beautiful piece that Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote down, and it's called "What is Success?" And when people are asked that question, including me, and invariably it goes to the world of work and what have I done? What have I been? How much money have I made? Et cetera, et cetera. But this is beautiful because it takes in so much. So it reads as follows: What is success? To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden, patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Ralph Waldo Emerson's one of my favorites, so we share that in common for sure. And I can't help but notice this beautiful, uh, it almost looks like a sculpture on your wall behind you. It's a tree. It's a tree that's growing and flourishing and thriving. Is there some significance to that, and does it relate to success?
Uh, yeah. I think in a lot of ways it ties in somewhat to what I just read by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's the tree of life, and it's an interesting piece. In the Judaic world, there's a term called tikkun. It's spelled Tikkun, and essentially it means healing the world or making a difference, or we can even say mission, success. So essentially, the type of work that I do, I feel needs to be tied into some way of making a difference in a positive fashion. So I only work with clients who have a similar type of mission, meaning they don't have to be nonprofit community healers. But I am very picky, especially in this new direction, who I work with. So Tikkun is really the type of work that I do, especially when it comes down to the personal branding and empowering oneself. It's kind of like before you can change the world, you need to kind of discover yourself. You need to kind of look at yourself within. And a lot of the work I've done in my personal branding has been that self-discovery piece first. Because as people get in touch with as the question is, their superpowers, what comes natural, it's essentially a piece of healing because they are bringing their whole self to wherever it is, whether it's work, whether it's volunteer work, whether it's charitable organizations. So for me, the tree of life is, and the symbolism of tikkun is very much a part of who I am and the work that I like to do, especially in this phase of my new direction.
Yes, I'd love to see you take healing the world to another level, and I think you're the absolute right person to do that. Question for you: What would people be surprised to know about you?
Let's see. What would be, well, I'm kind of like I'm kind of like a goofball in a funny sort of way. I There's a part of me that's, I don't know if it's an artist per se, but I think I've always, I guess in another life, I'd like to just be on stage in some way. I may have a serious demeanor today, but when I'm joking around with my friends, I still remember back in third grade, the favorite thing I loved to do was just make up these almost like Saturday Night Live comedy scenes and sketches. And if I could be paid for that, I would just do that full time, to be up on stage entertaining people. But there's that other part of me that's a part that is interested more in humanity and making a difference. So, whether it's like a Steven Spielberg or, one of my favorite movies was Dead Poet Society with Robin Williams. If I could kind of be almost a little bit of everything in that movie, an actor, a comedian, a writer, the meaning of that movie. So I don't know if that would surprise people. I guess I share this with my closest friends, but there's parts of me, and I think it brings up another point that I think in this world of work, we're always looking for that one career or that one job. And, nowadays you can be, I guess the word is a polymath, you can do a number of different things. So I wouldn't say that's a regret, but I realized that uh, you can do a lot of stuff. You can be a Renaissance person.
Yes. And as a follow-on question to that, what is the one thing that you know about yourself to be absolutely true?
I can connect the dots for almost anyone. And when I say connect the dots, it's, when I was growing up in the Bronx, I remember I grew up in a very diverse neighborhood, and we playing football and slap ball in the street. And I remember my friends were all different. We were Italian, Jews, Irish, some smarter than others. um, and they would, I would like always be the person who would say, all right, guys, this is what we're going to do today. So I kind of like knew that I could come up with a plan, whether it was with a group, like a take charge individual. So when I say connect the dots, if someone sat down with me and talked to me about a work issue or even a marital issue or whatever issue, it's kind of not being a genius, but it's kind of hearing the pieces and asking the right questions as you have done, and which I respect about you tremendously, and then coming up with some sort of pattern. And then the person, it could lead to an aha moment, or depending on what the individual does or doesn't do with it. So I would say it's really clarity, using the word, connecting the dots. And I think, again, a lot of this is how open people are to hearing it and acting on it.
Definitely. And there's a saying that sometimes people are on the inside of the jar and they're trying to read the outside label, which is an impossible task. And you help them connect the dots. You help them to read the outside label when they can, and heal. Because in a way, comedy and humor is a way to heal. So I'm very excited to see where you head next in terms of the healing the world piece, because I think that's exactly where you need to be. I have two more questions, and then we're going to pause, and then I have a bonus question to ask you. So these next two questions, we need your advice. What is a book that inspired you to behave or think differently?
Let's see. I think it was back in I want to say 80s or maybe even 70s. I was really reading a lot of, I would say, success oriented books. And I remember there was a magazine called Success Magazine, and I don't know if it's still published or not, but there was, there was an ad there for Napoleon Hill, who, of course, is the father of masterminds, of a lot of great stuff. And a lot of people to this day have never heard of him. And I remember ordering this book, and I literally have this book right here from Success Magazine, called The Law of Success by Napoleon Hill. And you can see how heavy, 1 million pages. And I remember reading it, and I was like, wow, Napoleon Hill was paid or by a number of famous people, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and other builders of America, to do a study of success. What are the common denominators in these people? And Mastermind Principle was there, and a lot of other stuff. And it's a classic. And I remember reading the book and getting really excited about how ideas travel through the ether. But it was also a part about addressing your fears, addressing fear of failure, addressing these sort of things. And I remember saying to myself, gee, I really connect with this tremendously, but I know I have to work on myself, because if I really want to obtain success or be the best that I could be, I have to kind of work on my, if you want to call it, fears or challenges in life, personally and professionally. So that kind of hit me hard. And that was a big influence. The other book, interestingly, I mean, there's a lot of books, but the other book, believe it or not, was called The Inner Game of Tennis by Tim Galway. which he's since written a number of inner games of golf, inner game of business. And I remember similarly, I was growing up in New York. I was an athlete. I loved playing ball, basketball in the city. And I was on the tennis team in high school. And I remember that it was very hard for me to compete because when I was out there, um, the mind game, the mental game would always come into play. And I knew there was something not right. It was almost like it was not fun. And Tim Galway kind of explained exactly that because as a teaching pro, he too would get to the point where it would be match point and he just would like choke. He just couldn't go through. And that was kind of a common theme in my life. And I remember reading about the inner voices we have inside, which ones help us, which ones hinder us. And then from there, I've gone off a lot of directions, but those two came to mind as influencing me fairly early on in life.
Thank you. The Law of Success. I have Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. I've not read The Law of Success. I'm definitely going to add that to my reading list. I'm a book junkie, as you know. And The Inner Game of Tennis. Is that right? Did I get that right? The Inner Game of
Yeah.
Tennis. All right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
that was
another one
his,
to add.
yeah, that was his first book. And he's done, as I mentioned, The Inner Game of Work, The Inner Game of Business. And I think they follow kind of a similar format about the voices in our head that can either, as I mentioned, help us or kind of be a block to our progress.
Fantastic. Thank you for the tip. One last question before we pause and go into the bonus question. This last question is, what's your favorite quote, Jordan, or motto, and why?
It's true. It's another quote that I was looking at, and this one, um, keep pulling it off the wall. This was by George Eliot, and I've modified it a little bit. His original quote is, "It is never too late to be who you might have been. It is never too late to be who you might have been." And I've kind of modified it a little bit and said, "It is never too late to be who you have always been." So I think that, to me, that quote kind of verbalizes my most recent journey in saying we've always had it within us. It's a matter of activating it, waking it up, and acting on it.
Think we found our soundbite as the trailer for this wonderful interview. What an amazing quote. Thank you for that. I'm going to pause here for just a moment. And friends, you can find more information on the web at www.jordananderson.com and also at productyou.com. And you can also connect with Jordan on LinkedIn. And the handle is Jordan Anderson #1. Jordan Anderson. There are quite a few Jordan Andersons I've seen. So it's Jordan Anderson #1. Kind of like there's a lot of Mary Maloney's in Ireland. So connect with him if you can. And I just wanted to pause here for a moment before we go to the last question. Is there anything you'd like to add?
In the work that I do, I kind of summarize it with kind of three words. I'm looking to help people kind of with almost like the three P's with passion, purpose, and profit. So how do we, when I say passion, it could be a combination of your skills, your superpowers, your talents, a lot of them which are dormant. Purpose, again, is really working with people, organizations of integrity who really want to make a difference in some way. It doesn't mean that they're, again, all about just charity. It's just they're doing good in some sort of way. And then profit from a business standpoint is what's the rewards that you get out of this, whether there's a monetary reward or something else. So it's that purpose or passion, purpose, and profit. So that's kind of some of the guidelines that I work within.
I wanted to thank you for reminding us. Your motto, I'm sure, is striking a chord with the folks who are listening right now, and it's I'm internalizing it. Where you said it's never too late to be who you have always been. That is profound, and thank you for that. I think we all need that reminder sometimes. Which leads to the last question. It's our bonus legacy question. It goes like this. If a higher power, I'm putting higher power in quotes, if a higher power, whatever you deem that to be, it could be God, spirit, time, 0 point field, Allah, give it a name. If a higher power would let you do, be, have, see anything, and there are no limitations, no financial limitations, no mindset limitations, no geographical limitations, what would that look like?
Well, I think I, we've talked about this in our mastermind circle a bit. Uh, the I see myself, and I've actually drawn this from doing some visual exercises, of being somewhat of an executive director of a career life design school, which is very, when I say holistic, it's a combination of mind, body, and spirit. But I think that our educational system, the working world, needs a lot of change. And I think a lot of the rules that I learned about my own success and journey have really been out of the box sort of thinking. And I have a lot of ideas that at times people don't want to hear because it kind of goes against the grain a little bit. Not crazy against the grain, but against the typically accepted grain. So I would say that I would love to be an executive director of a center that is people can learn from, connect with, be a membership where there's the last thing I'll say is the other piece that I live with is share self. I think we're here on this earth again from a higher power, however you want to do it, to share ourself in whatever ways we can, and that's a combination of work and life. And I think again, the greatest gift that we can give our children, our friends, our work colleagues, is sharing ourselves in some way, whether it turns into a sale or whether it turns into a friendship or whether it turns into some helpful point. It's kind of like when you ask directions from somebody on the street in the old days before GPS. The person was always so happy to help you with the directions. Remember, they say, "Oh yeah," and he was like, "All right, thank you, sir." So I think that's kind of the one of the mottos that I live on: share ourselves. And I think there's so much to learn and so much to share that I would love to have the opportunity to do that.
Yes, and I can attest your wife and you raised 5 wonderful boys, and, you certainly are both great examples to them. So, Jordan, thank you for being on the great work of your life. Again, you can connect with Jordan Anderson on the web at his namesake, jordananderson.com, productu.com, and his LinkedIn profile handle is Jordan Anderson #1. Thank you, thank you, thank you for
Thank you,
being here
Mary.
today.
Thank you so much.